name, I need to mention my name and my rank and smell.
Everything. We want everything.
I am retired Major General McClean. I was the founding Director General of the National Service in 1974. I believe that I was an Assistant Commissioner of Police. Then out of the blue, I was called by then Prime Minister Burnham and told that he wanted me to head this new development called National Service. To tell you God's truth, I knew nothing of it. I wasn't even aware. And I then had to hustle to get what was called the white paper at that time, which is what this is, but it's an orange version of what was white, called the LFS Burnham and National Service. And so I had to hurry up and read to find out what this was all about, although I had already been identified as the person to be the first Director General. I think Desmond Roberts, whose photograph I'm seeing here, was then in charge of the Ghana Youth Corps, if I'm not mistaken, as a director. And he then came as my second. And some of the photographs which I gave my good friend here showed us in the early days, in that time, a police pants and a t-shirt and something looked like a locomotive cap. Where we were with Dr. Ptolemy Reed on my first visit to Kimbia, which was the first center. Accompanying me there was the man who was charged to sort of create the early days of National Service, which is McDavid, Elvin McDavid. And he was there as well. And it was a very interesting visit because it was the first time I'd gone to Kimbia. And we had a small portable sawmill, and we had Father Dark was there. Was it Father Dark or no? Sorry, this Catholic priest who was an activist. No, he was the activist, and he was also there because I remember a photograph with him with the sawmill when we were checking to see how we were creating the lumber or whatever. Matthew Jason was already involved and helping to build Kimby as it was then. So that was my first introduction to National Service. I knew nothing about it. I don't know how I was chosen and why I was chosen. But to tell you the truth, it was the best years of my entire service. Between the volunteer force, which was my first military exposure, I joined the volunteer force as a private, ended up as a second lieutenant, and I was the first officer to troop the color at Eve Leary. And after that, I was then chosen from among quite a lot of applicants for the first 3 cadet officers. Over at Cecil Glasgow, who was number 1, I was number 2, and Skip Roberts number 3. And so we were the first 3 British Guyanese who were chosen to become members of the police force because we wanted to Guyanize the police force at that time. And so for the 16 years which I served in the police force, I was then suddenly plucked out of the police force to go to join the National Service as its first Director General. And that was a real game changer and something which I can never forget. It was great. And when we then had Charwin Burnham, who came as a deputy as well with Desmond Roberts, and he was a very professional, experienced public servant, but fell into line, and we found ourselves a triumvirate, myself, Desmond, and Charwin. And later we brought in John Pigott when we wanted to move into agriculture. And so we had a very instructive and formative time in creating National Service. And I believe it may have moved too fast, but I remember that for that first batch we had 604 pioneers. And those 604, we had 25,000 applicants, if I'm not mistaken, from which we had to take 604. the demand and the enthusiasm of the young people was so great, it was unbelievable that we could have so many applicants and we just couldn't take them. And I think that's what drove us to try and then absorb Chumachumari and then move to Papaya. And there was method in our madness. The reason we went to Papaya, Chumachumari, Conorouk, was because that was in the zona in Racamacion. This was the area being claimed by Venezuela as that side of the Essequibo. And this is why we went to populate that area, to have it occupied, to ensure that the Venezuelans understand that this is part and parcel of Ghana. And so that was a game changer. And so we then moved to Papaya in 1975. I think we moved so rapidly. 1974 June was National Service at Kimbia. And I believe by October or a little earlier, in 1975, we had established Papaya. And that was also a real challenge because completely different terrain. Kimbia was open savanna, was easy to handle. Papaya was mountainous terrain. We were uphill, downhill, and so that posed serious challenges for us. We had to arrive at Port Kaituma and then go by rail. By that time, we had a railroad, a 36-mile railroad from Port Kaituma to Matthews Ridge. And then after that, we had to be trucked and go to Papaya. And all of those were challenges. So I really enjoyed my service, and I enjoyed working with the young people. I think the young people were fantastic in my view. I think those are the people who really made National Service what it is. And so, from that introduction, we felt that because I didn't have to read up about what this National Service is all about, and there was only one document prepared by a man by the name of Harbison, Frederick Harbison, on human resources as the wealth of nations. And National Service was one of the concepts which he had in there. In traditional terms, it was seen as a cheap form of military service, as a safety net for idle hands. But we saw it in how we had adopted it as a larger concept for skills training. And so we moved ahead very rapidly. And I sometimes am challenged and called on to say, well, why was there so much military in it? Why you all have to have guns? Why you have to have this, that, and the other? But I make no apologies for how I structured it. I structured it in the military because then we could organize people in groups and we could train them in the disciplines which are necessary to get 604, 800, and 1,000 in Papaya. And the next batch, I think we had in Kimbia was over 800. And so the numbers went. At Papaya, we had 1,100 young people. In Conorouk, Chumachumari, and all the other centers that we opened, we were trying to absorb as many people as possible. And to tell you what we did, we tried to bring in parents. So for instance, when we were launching either the cotton project, we brought in parents by the thousands. By that time, we had acquired the Roro, what we call a Roro, which is a roll-on, roll-off vessel, the Jaimito. We didn't change that name. We bought it with that name. Really, it is the Spanish for Jimmy. And we maintained it. There was a lot of talk that maybe we should have changed it and put something that was more relevant or important to Guyana. But that was a very important vessel for what we wanted to do. We had brought the cotton gin from Miami on that vessel, and then we bought the vessel. And that cotton gin, I was very pleased to see some photographs here with cotton pickers and what have you, because we really moved very, very rapidly. And I don't take credit for that. I think when you look at Colonel Roberts at the time, who became the Director General subsequently, he was the live wire with John Pigott in terms of the agricultural thrust. And a lot of people don't realize that we fed ourselves. In Kimbio, I think when the Prime Minister came, the young people there, the pioneers, were complaining that they're getting too much chicken, you know, and we were self-sufficient in chicken, in eggs, in pork, in greens, and we had a large farm where we really trained the young people in agricultural skills. But beyond that, I think we were ahead of our time. Let's take tool technology. At Kimbio, we had our own lab set up there, where we had about 20 stations, training stations around. What was the name of the guy in charge of that big, strong fella? He was in charge of that tool technology lab at Kimbio. London, that's right. Right. And what we had was each student had a Briggs and Stratton engine. And we didn't have computers at that time, but we had cassettes. And in your own time at each station, you could go at your pace. And all London had to do was to walk around, and if there was any question, the student hand went up, and he would explain to them what was to be done. But what that did was to handle the tools that you needed to strip and reassemble an engine. And so each person had not only a Briggs and Stratton engine, but a tool kit. And from that tool kit, you learned the tools, whether this was a wrench, this was a double-ended spanner, whatever it is the terminology was. They learned those tools. And then they had to strip that engine, strip down that engine to all its components, the head, the cylinder, all the different parts, the piston. And then you had to reassemble it and start it. And in that way, you handling small engines. And then after that, we went to the workshop and took them to the workshop, where they then went on to the practical. You had it on your training table, but now you're in the workshop. And so you had familiarity with the tools, you had familiarity with breaking down and disassembling an engine and reassembling it and making it work. So I think that was the introduction we have for people in mechanical skills. And with all that we were doing, whether it was trucks, cotton pickers, spreaders, harrows, whatever, everybody now had the practical knowledge to move into the agricultural phase. So we trained a lot of agricultural mechanics, front-end loaders, you name it. So this was a very exciting time for us. And we were multitasking in the widest sense of the word. Because after that, we went through Mr. Major Semple, Neil Semple. He was very interested in stone construction. And so we took up Itabo Quarry, which subsequently was named Hooper's Quarry because we had a youngster who died there at Itabo. And we named it Hooper's Quarry. That is now the quarry which is now taken over by Mr. Brian Tiwari.
Yes.
And so we were already, and it was a fantastic experience because here we had young people, 16, 17-year-olds, who were operating D8 bulldozer, Caterpillar bulldozer, front-end loaders, and doing the training and all that was necessary in those areas. It was a fantastic experience we brought in. These were 50-ton trucks that they were operating and driving, and big bulldozers. And then we went into blasting, so you could blast the rock because it was very hard. And we were producing, 300,000 tons of stone a year. But you know, the problem was it was all going to the government, to whatever projects they were. So we had a fantastic experience. Every center had to be self-sufficient in terms of feeding itself as far as possible. And where we couldn't, then other centers had to send their whatever the requirements. So for instance, at Machimari, given the fact that we had the hydro, and we had a fantastic gentleman there, my name is Mr. Cornett, father figure there. And he was a disciplinarian of the first order. And cleanliness, orderliness were his watchwords. So you could have eaten off the floor of that hydro station. It was immaculate. All the brass and copper was shiny, and the youngsters understood timeliness, order, discipline, all through Mr. Cornell. And while we were there, we decided, you know, let's see, because they were doing some tailoring or whatever, we decided, look, we are going to go into a factory operation. So all the uniforms for the entire National Service were made at that facility there. And I think I did give you all some photographs showing you.
I have them.
Yes, right, in the tailor shop, right? Well, and then this was a machine operation. I mean, things were cut to size and whatever. You didn't have to measure anybody. It's like if you go in the store and buy a pants 36 waist or 28 waist or whatever it is. We did that. And those uniforms went to all the sections, all the centers in the country. I'm trying to remember, I met the man in Canada because they invited me to speak at a function, a police, ex-police officer's function. And he was in charge of that tailor making facility. So that and all the feeders and waterers that we needed for all the chicken farms throughout were made right there because we had the equipment. So that center had responsibility for electricity, power generation coming from the hydro, which they're now trying to refurbish after all these years. When I couldn't believe that we'd have allowed that to go down to the state it was. But I know there's a chap by the name of Lloyd Rose, Dynamic Engineering, who is now trying to refurbish that. And in fact, we are hoping that we can get that up and running. Because we had powered that to Conroe. When we built that Conroe airstrip, we had the airstrip, and we built the Conroe Center. And because of limitation in space, we started doing double-deckers, which we did at Papaya as well. So we tailor-made what we needed to suit the terrain in which we operated. And you know, the hardest and most difficult day I had was when we had that tree fell at Papaya. And somebody showed me a photograph of the monument as it was.
When I was at you.
And you know, it was sad. I was back at Matthews Ridge with the Reunion Manganese Project. And we went to Papaya to see what was left of the center. We couldn't find a single thing there other than the square. The square was there, and the base for the three flag poles were there. I did share it with some of the boys to show them what was left of Papaya, which we had so many losses there. Then we had a youngster who was electrical when we were pulling the power. I haven't seen him for a little while, but he lost his leg as a result because somebody put on the power when he was on it and burnt the hell out of him, and had to cut off the leg. Oh God, I'm trying to remember. You have to forgive me. At my age, I am no half-Alzheimer's, if not Alzheimer's. But that was a real challenge, but a real...
Neblet.
Is Neblet?
Yeah,
Neblet. I still see him sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know, all these guys remember me, but sometimes I don't remember them. But
We talk about thousands of people you don't know.
that is true. That is true. That is true. Chief, you don't remember me?
Thousands.
Thousands. And they will tell you the number 44, 50 something, or whatever it is. I was Papaya Force Intake. Everybody knows that.
4117.
Was proud to be part and parcel of that. I really, you can't think of it. But we had all the objectives cut out. Discipline, training in skills, productivity. All these are things that we did. And our young people, no matter what their walk in life or whatever was their culture, what have you, everybody fell in and became part and parcel of this dynamic new
family
trust.
that we
Yes,
still have
yes.
until today.
And you know, I had the opportunity, I think I have a copy, I must give you a copy of that report too. I did a report from the, what's the name of the, when I was in the Law and Order Commission. And I want to share, I'll give you a copy of it. We were asked to relook at the possibility of a new national service. That was the terminology.
Okay.
And this was in 2008. And at that time, we felt that we would then have a new system called Skills Enhancement Program, what we call the SEP. We knew that people didn't like the name National Service because of the connotation and the feeling. And it was just a feeling. Because when we took in that 25,000 people, those applicants were all voluntary. It's only those people who were benefiting from higher education that they then decided that you must come and give back. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so that's how the UG students came in. I don't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, because that is what brought a lot of the stigma and the feeling that we were compulsory and we were forcing people to come to the national. We didn't have that before. And we had quite a lot of people who were not very competent in academics and in what have you, but were, when I remember Lagadu, I can never forget that. Hear me, par excellence in terms of, hear me, to think that you have a youngster. I myself as Director General, I got Nireri, or I got Kaunda there, or what have you, and somebody got to go and speak. Even I, as the thing is, get little butterflies and what have you, because you got a big world leader and what have you. But you give that to Lagadu. Oh man, the man is on the floor and going on. So we had a lot of talent and in the cultural programs. When we think about Raj Kumari and her son, these people had their own skills and ability to create cultural programs. When I see Mr. Benny now, I think about Mr. Benny when he was a Lance Corporal in the culture corps, dancing and what have you, what I mean, as against what he is now. But these are the things that made the service what it was. And I can't begin to tell you all that has transpired, not just at Kimbio and at Papaya and Conrook. I remember Mr. Burnham saying to us, man, look, they got a German Democratic Republic factory sitting on the wharf for the last 5 years. It will make toothpicks and wooden products and what have you. I want you to take it and get it done. Within a matter of months, we got the late Gaskin, yes, Gregory Gaskin, who, and by the time we opened that center, Burnham was able to see us producing from that factory rulers, spatulas, toothpicks, and all sorts of things. But we were then, because we linked the sawmilling project to that, so you have an end product coming off of it. So there were great challenges for us. There were great challenges just to get the road from Chumachumari to Conroe, because it was 2 miles. Oh, no, but to get just outside of Chumachumari was a massive swamp that we had to overcome. Even bulldozer got stuck in that. And we had this guy, I have a photograph of him too. He was the engineering person who was there. And so we overcame the road, brought in very good saprolite for that 9 miles of road from Chumachumari to Conroe to power all the needs that we need for that toothpick factory, for the Meadows sawmill that we put in, and for the facility itself. And then we went into some gold mining there, which didn't go too well, but we were utilizing all the resources available to produce. So each center had its own challenge. Chumachumari was to do our tailoring, do our sheet metal work, produce our power. Papaya was greens. I mean, we were bringing out from Pumpkin Hill 300 tons of pumpkins coming out and more. The Jaimito was filled with produce. we could fly out all the greens and what have you. Because we had, trying to remember Ram Kisuna, he was the agricultural man at at Papaya, and we fed ourselves. Also, we had our poultry, as well as our pork being produced by the pigs and what have you that we had there. And it was the first time that I understood what it was to be different from other people, because I never realized that that pork had a stigma to it until I got there. Those young people knew when pork was being processed or dealt with at the mess hall, and they knew before he even got there. So pork was taboo to quite a few people, not just Muslims, but to quite a lot of Negro people. I don't know why. And so they would not touch pork or whatever. We had to be very conscious in our menus and what we were doing. Kimby, as you know, was agricultural as well. Cotton, black eye. I mean, when you flew over, I tell people we had an airstrip. They're a tarred airstrip. Recently, some Brazilians came, not recently, like 2 or 3 years ago. They wanted to find an area where they could produce sugar cane for ethanol. Not for cane itself, not for sugar, but for ethanol. But they wanted 100,000 hectares of land. And I told them, the only place you can get that sort of land is in the intermediate savannah. And so we went and took them to Skeldon, because that factory was being built. And when we left, we flew over what was supposed to be Kimbio. We couldn't find it. Although there was an airstrip, a well-developed, tarred airstrip there. We had a chap by the name of Cookshan, who was in charge of that, and we couldn't find it. The only way we knew where we were is because we flew near Ibini, and Ibini had a whole line of jamun trees, which I remembered, and that is what brought us to where Ibini was, and maybe where Kimbio was, but we couldn't find Kimbio. But our friend Pereira went with some people and went and visited that. So it was a great experience. I enjoyed my 5 years, nearly just beyond 5 years. And then Desmond took over, and then Joe took over. We had excellent people. John Piggott was a very meticulous and careful person. Had his little book, and he'd be thumbing through, and he can tell you how many eggs were produced, how much pounds of poultry meat and pork or whatever. And we really challenged ourselves on major projects. The stone quarry at Itabu for stone. So all in all, I have absolutely no complaint. And as Clement was saying, if she had to live her life over again, she would do it the same way. And I am the same.
I second that.
And I think it is sad that when the time came in 2008, when they wanted to revamp or start up some form of national service, as I told you, skill enhancement program is what we had called it. This was a suggestion being made by the 5 people who looked at it. Because it was a timely thing, because Omai had just closed in 2005. The facility was still there. We had 800, accommodation for 800 people. We had a mess hall, properly staffed kitchen, generation, airstrip, road, barge, everything, sports field. Everything was there to restart a form of national service. Okay, take out the military aspects of it, take out the guns maybe. Although I'm not sure, as I told them, a lot of the young people who came to us enjoyed that military aspect of it. I remember Kellawan, I don't know if you remember him. Yes. Those are people who, I was at Kurobuku, for instance. I was at Kurobuku doing my 1-month stint, because as Director General, even though I was Director General, I was required to go into that training, and I spent a month in Kurubuku, doing all that training. That kept me fit as a fiddle. But that was when I then had to go out, because that was the same time of the tree fell and the 10 young people were killed. And that was another very, very sad time, because as Director General, I went to every funeral. And that took me to all parts of the country, whether it's Mahiko or Linden or wherever. But the parents understood that their young people were being well treated. They were enjoying what they were doing. And this was a very sad moment for all of them, but they understood that this is sometimes what is required in the challenge of life, challenge of making a country what it should be. So sorry that we didn't take up that challenge to restart that program, because they were doing something on the highway at Kurukuru, but it was very limited. That would have done, you could have done it maybe 3 months there, and then move on to Omai, because all the facilities were there. Some rather, the government didn't take it on. We didn't have to give everybody all the uniform that they required, because when I went to Tanzania and Zambia, where they had national services, it wasn't as well structured and well equipped as we were. And give Jack his jacket and speak the truth. We needed to have our people prepared for this challenge which we are now facing once again with Venezuela. They are never going to give up on that, because I'll tell you why. They have prepared in their schools maps of what they claim is Venezuela, with the peace which they are claiming in Guyana's territory, called the Zona en Reclamación. And so from the young people who have grown up, they have grown up and taught in schools that that piece of ground is ours. And so a lot of them really cannot disabuse themselves of that issue. And we should be doing the same. And in the school system, we should have been doing that all the time, letting young people know what is Guyana and why, and give us some of that history of the Arbitral Award in 1899. And I see the Geneva Accord, which is now being publicized, thanks to the efforts of Brigadier Granger, His Excellency the President, because that is his forte, history, and he knows this issue. So I don't know where we're going to go from here. I see we've budgeted money to fight that juridically, and I hope that we go ahead with it, because we've been successful. We have competent people to do it, and let's get it done once and for all. Because as the President says, we got to get this monkey off of our back, which has been on our back for over 50 years. So the new Guyana man, I don't think we've achieved what we set out to achieve. I'm certain that the young people, everywhere I go, if I go to Papaya, or I go to Matthews Ridge, or wherever I go, those who are in the service will tell you that the service made me. Only this morning I was speaking with Captain Gavaya, and he was saying that his family didn't make him. National service made him.
So did I.
And so, although I only spent 5 years in the creation of that service, I can tell you this made a tremendous impact on me and my children, who I've had everywhere with me. And they understood what national service is. One of my sons, who's a vet, now has an hospital in Georgia, went to Cuba from national service. As you know, my big son was in the band, and what have you, and that is always, the memory is still there. The impact we have made on young people is tremendous. I am sad that people have abused the opportunities to denigrate and to say that national service was either ethnically not appropriate or whatever it is. But I am saying that, as far as I'm concerned, we should have continued with the national service, and we probably would have been in a much better place than we are at this point in time. So I hope that I've done justice to what you all would have liked me to say and do.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.